Hey y'all, it's Amanda. Welcome back. Today we're going to look at some of the most popular Pokemon in Regulation D, why they're so popular, and what you can do to counter them on your own teams. So interestingly, the meta has become a little bit less oppressive in Regulation D as it was in Regulation C when FLUTTER was on 70% of teams. So far in Regulation D, FLUTTER is only on 49% of teams instead, but it is still the most used Pokemon in the Regulation D meta at this time. And looking at one of the big online tournaments of Regulation D, the Victory Road to Yokohama tournament, FLUTTER was the most used Pokemon, and it overperformed when looking at the ratio of day 2 to day 1 usage. So it's looking very strong moving forward in this format. So the ratio of day 2 to day 1 usage is just, if you look at the number of teams featuring that Pokemon that made it to day 2, is it higher or lower than just the number of people that made it to day 2 overall out of the entire tournament? So in the Victory Road tournament, 8% of all players made it to day 2 out of all of the day 1 players. So if a Pokemon has a higher than 8% day 2 to day 1 ratio, then it overperformed, meaning it was more likely that if you had this Pokemon on your team, that you would make it to day 2 over just the baseline. Now, the way to deal with FLUTTER is the same as it has been all along. Make use of speed control like a faster Icy Wind, Prankster Tailwind, or Priority Moves to outspeed and KO FLUTTER. Keep in mind that bulkier builds are more common now than the faster builds that were more popular at the beginning of FLUTTER's time in VGC, so more power will be needed to OHKO the average FLUTTER. Alternatively, you can make use of bulkier mons that resist FLUTTER stabs like HEATRAN or AMOONGUS, for example. Keep in mind, though, that FLUTTER has started running Substitute as a counter to Spore from AMOONGUS, so you may need to play around that. And as expected, Water URSHIFU is also extremely popular with a showdown usage rate of 48%. We all knew that URSHIFU would be strong going into this format, and it is single-handedly making rain teams more popular as well. Mystic Water, Focus Sash, and Choice Scarf are the most common items on it, and keep in mind that Choice Scarf means that URSHIFU can even outspeed FLUTTER and Chien-Pao and KO with Surging Strikes even through a Focus Sash. Add Rain into the equation and you're looking at some monster damage that adds up really quickly. URSHIFU was also the second most commonly used Pokemon in the Victory Road tournament, but interestingly, it slightly underperformed on the D2 to D1 ratio. This could likely be due to the fact that most players came into this format knowing that URSHIFU would be popular, and therefore they all would have planned for the matchup and had counters for it. I actually had an entire video talking about URSHIFU and brainstorming some counters we could use to deal with it, so feel free to check it out up here and also down in the description. Now, with the popularity of URSHIFU and Tornadus' access to Prankster Tailwind and Prankster Rain Dance, it's not surprising that it's the third most popular Pokemon in the format and the most popular out of all 4 genies. However, Tornadus was only the 7th most popular Pokemon in the Victory Road tournament, and it performed neutrally on the day 2 to day 1 ratio, so it's possible we may see some shakeup in usage for Tornadus as the meta develops, although it will probably continue to be the most popular genie. Not only does Tornadus completely outclass our previous Prankster Tailwind user of Murkrow, but it also has access to Prankster Rain Dance to replace Pelipper on rain teams and turn URSHIFU into a killing machine. But it also has access to Prankster Sunny Day to help neuter opposing rain teams and Water URSHIFU. Most Tornadus are running Covert Cloak to nullify fake-out flinches or Ghost Terra for the same reason, so it'll be extremely difficult to keep them from getting Tailwind up. Your best bet is to bring your own Tailwind user to negate theirs and bring yourself back to an even playing field, or use slower and bulkier Pokemon so that the speed advantage becomes less important. And of course, who can forget the ever-present Amoongus? We've talked about this a ton, but Amoongus provides a ton of utility as a support Pokemon on teams. It has access to Spore for guaranteed sleep, Rage Powder for redirection, Pollen Puff to deal damage and also heal teammates, and Clear Smog to remove stat changes on either a partner or to stop an opposing setup mon. And not to mention, its Regenerator ability means that it's a great mon to use for pivoting and to ensure it stays on the field for as long as possible. And it's a great counter for URSHIFU, especially with the Rocky Helmet item to deal passive damage to Ursh, while also resisting both of Ursh's stabs. In showdown usage stats, Amoongus is on 31% of teams, and it was on 38% of teams in the Victory Road tournament. It performed neutrally on the day 2 to day 1 ratio, which makes sense. Amoongus is not a sleeper pick and is pretty splashable, so it makes sense that it would be used on a lot of teams. Counters are usually things like Taunt to remove its ability to use Spore or Rage Powder, Substitute to block Spore, or just outspeeding and KOing with mons like HEATRAN or Chien-Pao. HEATRAN also runs Grass Terra for partially this reason. The Grass Terra also is a great defensive type, but grass types are immune to Spore and Rage Powder, so it's a great counter to Amoongus as well. And Chien-Pao remains as the only Treasure of Ruin Pokemon still in the top 10 of the Showdown usage stats with a 30% usage rate. It makes sense. It's extremely fast and strong, and it pairs really well with the physical attackers dominating the top 10 most used Pokemon. In the Victory Road tournament, it was the 4th most used Pokemon with 35% usage and a neutral day 2 to day 1 ratio. However, keep in mind that Chien-Pao can also hurt by making its allies more fragile physically as well. And although Chien-Pao almost always runs Focus Sash, it can still be OHKO'd by URSHIFU's Surging Strikes. On the other end of the spectrum is a much bulkier special attacker, HEATRAN. HEATRAN featured heavily as a member of the first Firewater Grass Corps that emerged in Regulation D, which is HEATRAN, RILLABOOM, and URSHIFU, and it's still the most common Firewater Grass Corps you'll see. And HEATRAN still sees high usage in tournaments and on the ranked ladder, appearing in nearly 30% of teams. HEATRAN also saw a high day 2 to day 1 ratio in the Victory Road tournament, meaning that players using HEATRAN were more likely to make it to day 2 of the tournament. Plus, HEATRAN's typing and common Terra Grass typing gives it a great matchup into most of the other top 10 used Pokemon. Its Steel typing makes it powerful against Flutter Mane, its Fire typing helps it counter Amoongus, Chien-Pao, and Rillaboom, and its nearly always Grass Terra typing helps it counter even URSHIFU Rapid Strike as well. And since HEATRAN no longer needs to carry a Shuka Berry to offset its 4 times ground weakness, it's free to carry more useful items like the Assault Vest, Life Orb, or even Leftovers. Now, in previous formats of this generation, we've relied on Arcanine and Gyarados as the premier intimidators. But now we have access to Landorus Therian. We have a new Intimidator on the block, and not only can Landorus slow down opposing offense with Intimidate, but it can also deal a significant amount of damage itself. And with the ability to use a defensive Terra type to remove its 4 times weakness to Ice, Chien-Pao's prevalence isn't even that much of a deterrent to it. Landorus has appeared on 26% of teams on Showdown, and it had a high day 2 to day 1 ratio in the Victory Road tournament, which means we could see a lot more of it at Worlds. Now, we know that CRESSELIA has had a long and storied history as a top mon in past formats, and that is no different this time around. With a 23% usage rate and an extremely high day 2 to day 1 ratio, it also seems that CRESSELIA is poised to perform extremely well in tournaments. Not only did it win the Victory Road tournament, but it also has a new signature move, Lunar Blessing, which heals both itself and its ally for 25% of their HP and removes their status conditions. Paired with its existing support moves, CRESSELIA has the potential to be a real monster in this format. Now, we all knew that a key reason why Rillaboom was so good in Generation 8 was because of its access to a powerful priority move in Grassy Glide. Rillaboom no longer has access to that move, so it has to rely on Wood Hammer as its stab grass move for now. However, it does have access to some great utility moves in Fake Out and Knock Off and even Taunt. An interesting tech that's been used actually is to pair Rillaboom with Sneasler holding a Grassy Seed. Rillaboom's Grassy Surge allows Sneasler to consume its Grassy Seed and activate its Unburden ability, doubling its speed and making it one of the fastest Pokemon in the format. But Rillaboom has a lot of weaknesses. It's slow, it's somewhat bulky, but in the age of Chien-Pao, I don't know if that bulk is really enough. Rillaboom's usage rate on Showdown is 23%, but interestingly, it had a low day 2 to day 1 ratio, which means that it may not actually be a very good choice for future tournaments, or at least its role on a tournament team should be very carefully considered. Rillaboom is not as splashable as I think a lot of people would like to believe that it is. We already talked about Chien-Pao, so now let's talk about one of Chien-Pao's favorite partners, Dragonite. With a 19% usage rate and a neutral day 2 to day 1 ratio, Dragonite continues its streak as one of the most popular Pokemon in Generation 9. Although many sets have seen usage since the beginning of Generation 9, it is the Terra Normal Choice Band Extreme Speed set that remains the most popular. Play it well and carefully, and make sure you always have a game plan against this mon because its damage can rack up fast. Either use an ability or Psychic Terrain to block its E-speed, Ghost types for normal type immunity, or normal resists like Steel types to outlast its assault and take it down in return. As always, let me know in the comments down below if I've missed anything, if there's anything you agreed with, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel to see more like it. I'll see y'all later.